Hello and welcome to round one of Grand Prix Portland 2015. The format, team limited. We can see our two teams on screen here. On the left of our screen, at the far end, we got Paul Rietzl there, the 10th ranked player in the world. Next to him, Dave Williams, and then Paul Rietzl there. And on the other side, Zach Stern, Brandon Scheel, and Joseph Penney. Now, Sperling, Williams, and Rietzl, they won Grand Prix San Jose as a team just last year. They are very much the hot ticket here, and we're seeing them up against, we're going to start with Dave Williams up against Brandon Scheel, the middle match there. The players of Shuffle and Mulligan, they're going to be kicking things off very, very shortly. I'm Tim Willoughby, here with Jacob Van Lunen. Okay.
Well, we can keep talking about these teams a bit. I mean, the team on the left is particularly exciting here. Matt Sperling just coming off his first Pro Tour top 8. He's been on the Pro Tour on and off for like 10 years now. His best friend, Paul Rietzl, sitting right down on the other end of the table, he just got inducted in the Hall of Fame last weekend. So lots of exciting magic goings on for that side of the table. On the other end, Brandon Scheel is definitely the most well-known player, but, I mean, he's very good. He wants back-to-back 9th Pro Tours.
Ooh, it's a rough one, that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, here we see it already kicking things off real fast. On the right of our screen, looks like Scheel is the white deck. Starts off with the plains and an island there, and not too shabby a 2-drop there, Jacob Van Lunen.
Yeah, Dauntless River Marshal. I mean, that's about as good as it gets as far as 2-drops go if you're a blue-white deck. And
it looks like Dave Williams respecting it enough for a lightning strike. The River Marshal already was a 3-2 because the island was in play, but that not big enough to survive 3 points of damage coming from Williams. Williams on red-black, a slightly unusual color pairing that we don't see quite so much of in M15. What sort of plan do we think the red-black's going to be on? Just kill everything?
I imagine he's going to want to be drawing first. One of the nice advantages of playing the red-black deck is that your opponent's going to assume that everybody wants to be on the play in this format, but you're probably playing so much removal that you can just grind your opponent out. You cast a few copies of Sign in Blood. If your opponent doesn't have card draw spells in their deck, you end up just beating them by virtue of having more cards than they do.
So Carrion Crow there for Williams, and a Raise the Alarm end of turn for Brandon Scheel. So 2 soldier tokens that Williams perhaps wasn't expecting. They get to swing in for the first damage of the game. Dave Williams goes to 18 life, and there we see Sunbomb Pegasus coming into play for Scheel. Nice little pickup there. A 1-2 flyer with lifelink, not currently able to fight the Crow in combat, but blue-white potentially with a whole bunch of enchantments.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the Pegasus here is that it's going to force Williams to keep his Crow on defense, and then Brandon Scheel gets to really set the pace of the game with his tricks. Sungrace Pegasus, not so quietly, the best white 2-drop in M15. Initially, when people looked at the set, cards like Oresco Swiftclaw, people might have thought those cards were better, but with things like Forge Devil in the format, it's really just Pegasus all the way.
Dave Williams getting an attack in there, making it 18-18. Let's see what he's got for his 4-drop. I mean, this is a format where, because everyone's got more cards to work with, we can kind of expect to see most decks curving out most of the time, which is familiar there for him. 2-3 a perfectly fine blocker for those 1-1s. And looks like a Welkin turn as the pickup there for Brandon Scheel. That will be a fine blocker for Carrion Crow, or potentially let him do something more. Is that there's a Frost Lynx there just at the top of our screen. So tapping down the Witch is familiar, and meaning that Scheel can get some big swings in there.
Yeah, I'm very surprised about that attack from the Carrion Crow from David Williams.
Perhaps signaling that he thinks that he's able to dominate this early game, even though it looks like Scheel's the one with the most things on board. Which is familiar.
Remains tapped.
There we go, yeah. And it briefly untaps it and looked like it would attack, but no. That's the Frost Lynx there. When it comes into play, it taps a creature. That creature doesn't untap in your next untap step. One of the things I think it's going to be worth pointing out, and this will be true for the entire weekend, is that there are some premium tricks for various colors of decks, so sort of Sanctified Charge, for example, for the white decks, that because of the number of packs opened, you can almost assume that your opponent has at least one in their deck, and that's probably the safe way around of playing it.
Definitely. I think that's something that's really interesting about Team Limited in general, is that the high-quality commons of a particular color, playing around them is very important, and you know, just knowing when your opponent has them and when they don't is going to set a lot of teams apart.
Yeah, it would be an unfortunate anomaly almost not to have at least one of a particular common.
This is an interesting attack here because Scheel, even if he has a pump spell here, it's really dangerous to play it and not. Oh, that's exactly the card he needs there. That's
so
great.
A Banishing Light there to remove the Carrying Crow. And now that there's no longer any flyers on board, that Welkin turn, I'm guessing, is going to come down post-combat and mean that Scheel has quite the air force. Dave Williams already on just 11 life.
And look at that board there for Brandon Scheel.
Now that's interesting. It looked like Dave Williams there passed with mana up. I think he has a Flesh to Dust in hand. Oh, wow. That an interesting card for main decking there. We see immediately the board changing a huge amount there for Brandon Scheel.
Fester Gloom.
Yeah, Fester Gloom giving all non-black creatures -1/-1. Stab Wound finishing. Wow. Immediately, Dave Williams has gone, I'm going to cast 2 spells. Suddenly, we each have 1 creature on the board, and mine has 1 more toughness than yours.
I like that a lot. I also, I like main decking Fester Gloom in this format in Team Sealed, especially putting him in the middle seat where you're probably going to be seeing a lot of white opponents. I think that Fester Gloom is just going to be a blowout a lot of the time here for Dave.
A second Frostlinks for Brandon Scheel, potentially kind of what he was looking for, because he's already got Williams down to 9. He just wanted to push through those last few points. And if there was something like, I don't know, Appeal from Reality to reset his Frostlinks and potentially get rid of another blocker, he might be able to just kind of tempo his way to a win here, even after that fairly blowout sequence of plays from Dave Williams.
Yeah, that's the really dangerous part about the blue-white deck, is that even if you clear the board, the top of their deck is always going to be live with a lot of evasion, and you need to keep a strong board on defense, and pressuring your opponent while doing that can be very difficult.
And it does look like there is a Sanctified Charge. Is that there in Brandon Scheel's hand?
That's correct. Here it would only get David down to 1 life, so not quite worth playing it, but a Quickling here is quite strong, going to allow him to replay this Frostlinks and continue tapping down the Witch's Familiar.
Yeah, Dave Williams potentially drawing fairly slim now. Even without the trick, Brandon Scheel currently presenting lethal on the board for the following turn's attacks. It looks like Williams here has drawn a few more lands than maybe he wanted to, maybe not quite as many spells as would have been ideal, and Scheel has just had a very, very synergistic draw.
Yeah, I think both their draws were quite strong. The major thing that happened here is that Scheel was just able to get in with a lot of that early aggression, and I think that early attack with the Carrion Crow may actually be the few points that end up mattering a lot here.
So Zoffshade coming down. It looks like Scheel's just drawn a Turn to Frog, so he's got a couple of good tricks to work with here. Interesting to see whether or not... I'd be tempted to just attack in here and see what happens, and then know that I've got options.
Definitely. I mean, he's going to attack with both. Once the Shade gets pumped, he can play the Inspired Charge, and then...
Now, how do the rules work in terms of, if it's been pumped and then I turn to Frog, does the pump layer still stick about?
No, it does not. You have to let the pump resolve first, but...
He's actually gone with the Sanctified Charge here. I guess
Definitely.
This does put Williams down to just 1 life, which is obviously a nice place to be, and then he's still got the Turn to Frog if he needs it for something else that could prove more problematic. And a Haunted Plate Mail there from David Williams. That's something that can potentially change the way that this game looks if he can get the time to use it. He's got a very, very uphill struggle at this point on just 1 life.
Shouldn't the Frostlink still be in play? Gives it first strike?
No, it only gives white creatures first strike.
Oh, and it gives white creatures first strike. Yes, you're right.
Turns a Frog here. Amusingly, changing a frog into a frog, just a much smaller one. Shrink to smaller frog, successfully, meaning that Frostlinks wins that fight. But Haunted Plate Mail now, in principle, able to change into a creature. Or indeed, if it's going to equip something, a Child of Night, a very, very good option.
Yes.
So that Child of Night, naturally a 2/1 with lifelink, now just a little bit bigger, able to present pretty much the perfect blocker as far as Williams is concerned, because he desperately needs to get off 1 life. And more lands for Williams, who's content attacking in here, knowing that he's going to be gaining some life. I mean, the Nightmare scenario would be some kind of a bounce spell, but I think at this point, Dave Williams really can't afford to play around too much.
Oh, I mean, he has to attack here. You have to start getting the life from that Child of Night while it's available.
But Williams now up to 7, taking a couple of points of damage here, going down to 5. And wow, it looks like Brandon Scheel has quite the deck there. This could be a big problem for Dave Williams.
Well, an ulcerate will take care of that.
The ulcerate, which he wouldn't have been even able to cast the turn before because he didn't have the life to be able to pay. A very disciplined game here from Dave Williams, being able to find a line that's able to keep him just close to being on top of things in terms of life. We'll just make sure that players now speeding up a lot as effectively they're just trading punches.
Yes. And Scheel's going to need to find an answer here for the... Ooh.
All children all the time, and he re-equips across to the untapped one, so he's got a great blocker. That effectively, that Haunted Plate Mail doing so much work for him in this game, and actually enough to just take it out of nowhere, really. I mean, David Williams was down to just 1 life on that one, and that's the first game that's been completed in this match. Now, one of the cool things that we have in a Team GP, we've got 3 relevant kind of synchronized matches going on that are all important in terms of the overall shape of things. So we're going to be moving across to our table A now, that Matt Sperling against Zach Stern, the one in the front camera here. So we can see here that Matt Sperling, he's blue-green. He's up against Zach Stern, who's red-green. So an interesting kind of match that we're going to see here.
Whoa.
All right, so we know where the power has ended up in terms of the table on the right here, and Matt Sperling knows it too. Siege Dragon and Soul of Chandelier there.
That's generally what you see happen when that's
yeah, if you get to untap with one of them in play, you feel pretty good. When you untap with both, you're like, well, I've got this 3 points of damage that I can deal to one of my opponent's creatures and to them. Then I get to attack you for the earth and everything on it. While I'm attacking, I get to Pyroclasm your side of the board. Also, you're dead.
Yes.
And by the looks of things, all 3 players shuffling up here. So even though we saw Dave Williams win his game 1, or was that? Yeah, so Paul Rietzl has won his game 1 also. So currently, even though Matt Sperling, who's facing the nightmare that is Siege Dragon plus Soul of Chandelier, his team's still winning. And that's one of the cool things about the team format. Sometimes, even if you're having a bad day, you're kind of having a good day.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a terrible day in terms of your own personal match record. You can go 4-5, let's say, and you could be undefeated in the Grand Prix. That's one of the things that's really nice about this format.
One of the funniest examples of that, to my mind, a friend of mine, Jake Smith, he was on a team with Nikolai Herzog for a Team Pro Tour. They finished 2nd. Meanwhile, Jake's record was strongly in the negatives. But it didn't matter, you know, if the rest of your team's good enough, or, you know, matching up well, having the right draws, having everything working out, you can still do just fine. And I'm sure that even though Matt Sperling, you know, he had a slightly rough beat that game, he's going to be quietly happy that the rest of his team's doing all right for him. And I'm sure that the trust is there that in other rounds he'll be doing the same for them.
I'm sure. I think that, you know, it's a bit of an anomaly when you play against something like Siege Dragon and Soul of Chandelier at the same time.
I mean, in some respects, the match where you go, well, I've lost to these incredible rares, but my team has won, you're kind of going, well, great. Especially if you're the one that had slightly ropey draws.
Yeah, or if you have the weakest deck and you find yourself playing against the other team's strongest deck, that's a great place to be, because now the other team's strongest cards are playing against your weakest cards, and you have 2 strong decks playing against their weaker decks.
Now, it's interesting you brought that up, because obviously there will always be a weakest and a strongest deck. One line of strategy that I've heard discussed, but that I personally don't agree with, is the idea of going, let's make 2 absolute monsters, 2 super, super powerful decks that are just going to be incredible, and then one deck that's kind of the scrapings off the plate at the end, the scraps, and hope that we can cobble together something that might win a game somewhere.
I don't like that strategy at all. I think that all of the decks are going to be strong enough when you're playing 12-pack sealed that you have enough to build 3 very strong decks, and having just 2 decks puts you in a massive disadvantage, because you essentially have to win 2 different matches each round, and those are the only matches you're giving yourself a realistic shot at.
Yeah, you would never choose to go into a tournament saying, I'm going to start every match 0-1 down. And that's effectively what you're doing, right?
Yeah, your odds would just be decimated.
Yeah, the moment that you're, I don't know, your limited pool, you don't register any lands, and you can't, but you register 40 cards, so it's a legal deck, and the judges are like, nope, you're just stupid. And you have to just play games 2 and 3. I did actually once have a PTQ where I managed to fail to register an island for my splashed Venser, and had to content myself with mulliganing every now and again when I just drew this incredible card that I couldn't possibly cast. I won a lot of games 2s and 3s, though. Whew. But it looks like big smiles on Team Sperling Williams Rietzl there. Rietzl, the number 10 ranked player in the world. We might get a chance to see a little bit of his match at some point, but I think that we're probably going to try and see a little bit more of Dave Williams versus Brandon Scheel, just so we get a sense of continuity for how that exact match within a matchception, that's what we've got going on all weekend, how that's going. We see there Dave's presented, so that's probably going to be the first match to start as well.
Yeah, they were the first ones to finish their last game, so they'll probably be the first to begin this next game.
All right, let's hope no mulligans. I know that as a player, you look across the other side and you're like, kind of hope that you're going to go to 6, and then when they do, you're like, kind of hope you're going to go to 5. When we're in coverage,
Kind of.
when we're in coverage, we just want to see good games, and the best games of Magic are the ones that start with 7 on both sides. It looks like that's what's happened here. A Swamp starting for Williams, a Plains for Scheel, and a turn 2 play here from David Williams of that Child of Night. It was very important in Game 1. Let's see how it does in Game 2. Kinsbell Skirmisher there. Not ideal on turn 2. Its ability of coming into play and giving something +1/+1 until the end of the turn, not really doing a whole lot, but as a 2/2 body to jump in front of a Child of Night, completely fine, and given that we know that Scheel has a lot of tricks, potentially it could do a lot better.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about leading with Kinsbell Skirmishers, you know that Williams' deck has things like Ulcerate and Lightning Strike. He's just so full of removal that you don't really want to play your best 2-drop on turn 2, because if Williams doesn't have a 3-drop creature, then you're going to end up, just taking your removal spell out of his hand, and you'd much rather trade your bear for his removal spell than something like a Dauntless River Marshal. So,
absolutely, yeah. So we see here a couple more creatures being added to the board. On the right of our screen there, that
Warden of Beyond, the Beyond.
Warden of the Beyond, yeah. Interesting card, this one. 2/3 Vigilance for 3, which is pretty solid anyway. I mean, if you look at Witch's Familiar, it's got a little bit more going on than that. Midnight Guard, also another one that feels like it has Vigilance in its own sort of way. But then, if on the off chance anything gets exiled, it gets +2/+2, which is just value. I can actually see it potentially seeing a tiny bit of playing constructed, given the appropriate support. But on the other side of things, we've got our first flyer, a Necrogen Scudder there for David Williams. 3/3 flyer for 3, but he is taking 3 damage as it comes into play, potentially a dangerous amount of damage, but it's also almost always going to be the biggest flyer on the board, right?
Yeah, Necrogen Scudder is great. 3 toughness is extremely important in Magic 2015 Limited, and Evasion is always going to be good in Core Set Limited. So a card like Necrogen Scudder, a first pick worthy card, really top of the chain when you're looking at the power level of black uncommons. It's definitely the best creature up there.
And there, Dauntless River Marshal for Brandon Scheel. We know he's got 2 of them. He's got the 4 mana available that if he gets to untap, he gets to start tapping things down. But it looks like Dave Williams says, nope, that's not going to happen. I'm willing to tap down my entire team in Covenant of Blood.
And what a great peel from reality there from Brandon Scheel. Returning his creature to his hand, preventing David Williams from getting the 4 life from his Covenant of Blood, tapping his opponent's whole board down for the turn, and returning the Necrogen Scudder, which will make David Williams have to deal himself an additional 3 the following turn when he recasts it. Just probably the best peel from reality I've seen in Magic 2015 Limited.
I mean, there's a lot of great peel from realities. I mean, peel from reality, by the way, always going to be good in Brandon Scheel's deck. He's got those Frost Lynxes. He's got creatures that he really, they're like a cut above that he wants to keep around. It's just ideally suited to a blue-white tempo deck, which is what he's got. And it looks like a Crippling Blight there from Williams. He's not necessarily saying that he wants to immediately replay the Scudder. I mean, that does mean that now blocking options for Scheel are a little bit limited, though this attack, kind of an interesting one. Child of Night, a 2/1, attacking into that Warden of
Well, Word and
Overwatch.
Beyond's only a 2/2. Nothing's exiled yet.
Okay. Still, asking a question of Brandon Scheel here, and I guess Dave Williams, he really does want this life. He's going to get it one way or another. It's just a matter of whether or not his Child of Night's going to hang around. Brandon Scheel says no. And there's the Necrogen Scudder. So he gains 2, loses 3, but he's got the Scudder back on the board. Is there another bounce spell? I mean, we know that there's the potential for that that Warden to, the River Warden to come back down, River Marshal to come back down and just keep it tapped down, which at that point you've paid 3 life to tap a lot of your opponent's lands.
From the looks of it, Brandon Scheel actually has 2 Dauntless River Marshals in hand. So I think he'll just play both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-2 for 2, given that he's got that island in play. And it looks like a Solemn Offering in hand now. That, I guess, something that's been sideboarded in to deal with Haunted Plate Mail should it come down. Both the River Marshals, there they are.
And David Williams has a Siege Dragon in his hand, so
Oof.
he's, you know, missing that 5th land drop wasn't ideal for him, but he did just find a 5th land on the top of his deck. If he can chain another 2 together, then his draw is becoming much better.
It looks like there might be a second Covenant of Blood there as well. I think we're starting to see where Dave Williams' deck is, where the real power lies. We didn't, in the first game, it kind of felt like he nickeled and dimed his way through, and then Haunted Plate Mail mopped up. This time round, we're starting to get a sense of the power in Dave Williams' deck. Now, this is a card that I'm a big fan of in this format. Rotfeaster Maggot, 3/5 for 5, which is actually a really, really solid set of stats in this format.
It's great. 5 toughness, super important again.
It blocks just about everything and kills it, contrary to a lot of the wars in the format say. Also, removing things from graveyards, gaining that life. We've seen that there's ways of Dave Williams hurting himself in the format. There's Sign in Blood on top of Necrogen Scudder potentially in his deck. But then also, every now and again, you get to do something really filthy, like snag your opponent's soul out the graveyard.
You're an attack for 9 from Scheel there after tapping down that Maggot.
So we know what Brandon Scheel's up to. He's just saying, I don't want you to get more lands in play. I don't want you to draw more removal spells. I want to end this game fast. Will Dave Williams, with his kind of controlling red-black deck, be able to get there?
This is definitely a very controlling deck. If we see red-black decks this weekend, they're almost certainly going to be controlling decks. Cards like Ulcerate and Lightning Strike that we've seen from Dave here, those are the perfect cards for the more controlling decks. You really want your removal spells to be inexpensive when you're playing the control deck. The more expensive removal spells, things like Flesh to Dust and Encrust, those are much better in the more aggressive decks, where you empty out your hand quickly and then you can tap all your mana and play your removal spells to get the roadblocks out of the way, as opposed to wanting to tap all your lands to play big threats and wanting to use the removal spells to stay alive in the early turns or to respond to pump spells when your opponent tries to bash through one of your big things.
And Dave Williams is very comfortable in the control role as well. I mean, he top-8'd US Nationals with his blue deck many moons ago now. I mean, all 3 players on the Sperling Williams Rietzl team have a number of reps under their belt. They know what they're doing in this Magic format, and indeed pretty much all of the formats over the years, because they've played pretty much all of them. Another Covenant of Blood there, dealing with one of the River Marshals. Just the one left to kill off. I mean, this is a situation where I'm sure Dave Williams would love to be able to just hang back and go, I'm just going to mop up your entire board with Siege Dragon, but that requires an awful lot more in the way of lands for him. He just can't guarantee he's going to find them. Constricting Sliver there, getting rid of Rotfeaster Maggot, a more efficient way of dealing with it than tapping it down this turn and allowing another big attack. Dave Williams now on just 3 life. What's he got? That's the 6th land. Can he survive this turn in order to get that dragon on the board?
It looks like he can. He has Lightning Strike for the Constricting Sliver, which is pretty good here because he gets to gain some more life now with the Rotfeaster Maggot.
So the Sliver tried to eat the Maggot, and then the Maggot came back and ate the Sliver. Justice.
Yeah, perhaps the Sliver should have gone for the Necrogen Scudder, but it's hard to know that your opponent has a Lightning Strike. He had a lot of opportunities to cast that card.
Yeah, Dave Williams, very patient on his removal spells, and it's a real sort of, I think this is one of the skills that is sort of where people level up in Magic. The moment that you start to get into the mindset of, I don't have to use this removal spell right now, I should wait for the right target and the right time, to me is a big moment in any player's Magic career. It just makes them just a better player. And that's interesting there, because we don't often see non-basic lands that don't fix your mana, but it looks like Dave Williams has decided that this is the right deck for it, because that there looked to be a copy of Radiant Fountain, gained him a little bit more life, gave him the 7 mana, and now Brandon Scheel, he's having a bit of a read. That Siege Dragon, when it comes into play, destroy all walls your opponent controls. Now, that not necessarily too big a deal for Scheel, hasn't got any. On top of that, it's a 5/5 flyer, potentially a bit more of a problem, but he can tap things down. If he doesn't tap it down, if it attacks, it's going to deal 2 damage to all creatures that Brandon Scheel controls, unless he has a wall. So Brandon Scheel now, he's in a tricky spot where basically he needs to either find a removal spell super fast, or a large proportion of his lands are going to be used tapping down that dragon. Quickling there from Scheel. Lets him pick up Kinspell Skirmisher, so that's now going to be able to come down and pump something up. He pumps up the Quickling.
Ooh, I like this.
Interesting. So this
he's trying to signal that he has Sanctified Charge here, and that he was trying to pump the Quickling up to a 3/3 so that it could trade with the Siege Dragon. But in reality, his plan is just going to be to tap down the Siege Dragon on the following turn with Dauntless River Marshal, and then on the following turn he's going to try to go for the kill, and he has the Banishing Light in hand to punish a lot of the different lines that David Williams might take here.
That a really high-level play from Brandon Scheel, and one that wouldn't necessarily work on every player, but because of Dave Williams' caliber as a player, he knows to look out for that sort of thing, and hence took the bait effectively.
Yeah, it seemed very obvious what he needed to play around, and now as a result, it's going to change the way David Williams plays this game. He's already going to be playing very conservatively. He only has 5 life remaining, and he does have a Siege Dragon on the board, so...
Yeah, step 1 in Dave Williams' plan has to be kill that Marshal. Get it off the board, let Siege Dragon do its work, because once Siege Dragon is active and able to attack, everything else kind of falls into place for Dave Williams here. It's going to get rid of basically Brandon Scheel's board. And from there, he certainly has the tools to mop up this game. But the first step, a pretty important one, and one that, well, he clearly currently doesn't have an answer, because I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have hesitated to play it.
Ooh, are we going to see an attack here from Dave Williams? I'd be pretty surprised by that. It looks like he has another Maggot in hand, which is very good.
Every point of life important here. Dave Williams showing that it's not just the white decks that get life gain. Life gain actually a very important component for the black decks in M15.
Yeah, Scheel's already dealt well over 20 points of damage in this game.
Yeah, we've seen this. I mean, this is effectively the 3rd Rotfeaster Maggot meal.
Yes.
Of the game, and that plus some Child of Night means that Dave Williams, rather than being on an entirely dead less than 0, he's on a precarious 6. Another Kinspell Skirmisher here for Brandon Scheel. So he gets to do the exact same thing that he did last turn, which is only this time the dragon's already tapped down. So now he's saying...
Now he's offering a block with the Scudder, which Williams might actually take.
And there's the Devouring Light. Has the creatures to tap to convoke it, so he gets to keep more mana up. And with 4 mana, 2 of it blue, there's a number of counterspells in the format he could easily have in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, this mana is definitely tied down, though, because he needs to use it to tap down the Siege Dragon, or he just gets Plague Winded. So, Williams can essentially act as if Scheel has nothing. Yeah.
So Williams taps down gets his dragon tapped down, plays a Child of Night. It's empty-handed magic from him. It's nearly empty-handed magic from Brandon Scheel. Everything on the table. And on the table, we see that Brandon Scheel is kind of ahead just because he's the one that's able to attack where Williams isn't really. At some point, we're going to see a solemn offering. There we go. It's on the. Yeah, he's got rid of a crippling blight, which normally not something that you would want to kill off. And really, the main reason for that is Scheel's just sort of saying,
yeah,
I
he
need
just
to
wants
be able to block if I have to.
And the other thing is that it's going to get stuck in his hand once he draws an 8th land anyway. So he's just trying to get a tiny bit of value out of it, because once he draws that 8th land, if he's going to win this game, he's going to be using all of that mana every single turn to sink into that Dauntless River Marshal. So while it may seem like he's just throwing a solemn offering away, he's actually never going to have an opportunity to cast it once he draws one more land.
That's really interesting. It's something I think a lot of players wouldn't necessarily see, that basically he's saying, there's no point ending the game with cards in hand that I haven't cast. Those cards are worth nothing to me. This way round, I get a small amount of value, a small amount of life, and if I win the game with Xaxes, that's kind of perfect. So, Scheel here, potentially considering a bigger attack, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, he could just go for it. He could tap down a single blocker, then, you know, he's sending 5 guys, each of which have 2 power, into 2 guys, and his opponent's at 6. So, assuming Williams has nothing, the tap something down and attack with everything play is a winning play here.
And that's what he's going for. 1 card in Dave Williams' hand by the looks of things. Williams, one of the players most difficult to read on the pro Magic circuit.
Oh, without a doubt.
No way of knowing whether or not that 1 card is another land or... Well, I guess now we know it's another land.
Yeah, making him sweat.
So Scheel leveling up that one. We're going to be going to a 3rd game there. But it looks like there are other 2 games still going on. So we've just heard one more match has just finished, or at least another game has finished. We're just working out which table to take you to there. Matt Sperling squaring things up against Zach Stern. He's successfully found a way of defeating Siege Dragon and Soul of Chandelar, which I'm sure he feels pretty pleased about. And now we immediately see he's there going to help Dave Williams thinking about sideboarding for the final game.
This is a very close match here. Currently 3-2 in games.
Ultimately, it's not about how many games you win, it's how many matches, though. And we see here, so this is the match between Paul Rietzl on the left of our screen and Joseph Penney. The big dog on the screen. Wow, look at some of the rares that Joseph Penney has going on. That looks like Jace the Living Guild Pack at the bottom of the screen there on 6 loyalty. Then we have Ob Nixilis with a couple of counters on in play in the middle there. Huge, huge powerful threats from the blue-black deck. But then just a mass of tokens from Paul Rietzl's deck. And I know from watching him build that he has 3 copies of Sanctified Charge. So this attack, potentially a very, very dangerous one. Lots of spirit tokens. I mean, if there is a Sanctified Charge here, this could really change the face of this game quite substantially. Not quite clear how much of this is going at Jace, how much is going at Joseph. If there's a Sanctified Charge, it could easily just all be going at Joseph.
He may want to save it for the turn that if he has multiples in hand, he could use one here, but you know, he does have 5 mana untapped, and he may just want to save it so that he can use the Sanctified Charge when he's actually attacking with everything. Right there we see one of the most quietly powerful rares in the set on Paul's side of the table. Spirit Bonds.
Oh my. Now talk us through what Spirit Bonds does for those who haven't played with it yet.
Okay, so whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay a mana, 1 white mana, and then you get to put a spirit into play, a 1/1 white spirit. Then you can pay 2, a colorless and a white, sacrifice a spirit, and that can be a spirit from Triplicate Spirits. It doesn't have to be something from the enchantment itself, and give any creature you control indestructibility until the end of turn. So it's a really exciting card. It makes playing a long game very difficult to lose. It's just very exciting.
And that was one of the cards that was designed by someone who doesn't actually work for Wizards of the Coast in this set. Designed by Justin Gary, and a really interesting kind of twist on this Magic 2015 set, that there are these cards that they've not come straight from R&D. They definitely went through R&D and had an awful lot of development and testing on them. But the initial concept coming from the other side of things, same deal with Obnixilis as well, actually. That one that didn't initially come from...
So pretty exciting there. We just saw happen how this game ended. Caustic Tar dealt Paul Rietzl the final 3 points of damage. Now, that's about as cool as it gets if we're looking at interesting ways in which games are going to end.
Caustic Tar one that anyone that was playing a lot during Odyssey Block will be well familiar with just how powerful that card is. Basically, costs you 6 mana, you enchant one of your lands, but from then on, that land taps to deal, cause your opponent to lose 3 life. So effectively, it's like a 6 mana, or maybe a 7 mana, hasted 3/3 flyer with or 3/3 unblockable creature that can never be killed.
Yeah, it's also a pretty nice option to have with Heliod's Pilgrim. It's the poor man's Spectre Ward, as I like to call it. It always deals your opponent 3, gives you great inevitability. You can make a lot of... It's a great escape hatch when you're drafting decks. For those of you at home who might not be playing in a team-limited tournament, you might have to draft and end up with a few Heliod's Pilgrims, which is a great common in this set. And your deck just is great at turtling up. You have a ton of life gain. You have things like Congregate. You have Sungrace Pegasus. So you're very good at not losing, but you're not very good at winning. Caustic Tar is a pretty good way to end games, and it may seem like a pretty junky card, but you can send that thing around and it'll wheel right back to you. It'll go all the way around the table and come back.
All right, so this is the deciding game now between Dave Williams and Brandon Scheel. You'll see there our little highlight bar making it very clear which match we're watching at any given time. That's going to be a fixture for the entire weekend. And Brandon Scheel on the play, leading off with a Welkin turn. And Williams, it looks like he's got a good mix of land and spells, and quite a few removal spells at that in his hand. He goes for the ulcerate there on the turn. So taking a little bit of damage in order to kill off the creature, but I mean potentially signaling that there's not going to be loads of creatures from Williams in the early game, but plenty of removal.
And that's one thing that's pretty interesting about Williams' deck, is I feel like it probably plays better on the draw with this much removal. It's actually just better for him to have more cards in his hand when he has this many removal spells that cost this little mana that are this versatile.
So Sungrace Pegasus followed up by a Dauntless River Marshal from Scheel, and a Quickling there able to save the River Marshal. He knew that he didn't want to play it until turn 4 and that there was a way that you could keep it around. Quickling there, the 2/2 flyer with flash. When it comes into play, return target creature you control to your hand. It's a weird card because it's the sort of thing that there will definitely be times that it's sat in your hand and you look at that last line of text and you think, this is kind of a drawback. And then there'll be moments where you've got a Dauntless River Marshal in play and you've got a masterful Magic player trying to kill your best creature and you go, nope.
Yeah, so it essentially there read 2/2 flyer for 2, put a Dauntless River Marshal into your hand.
Yeah.
Like, just from nowhere, because it would have been done otherwise.
So
pretty nice.
Dave Williams on a little bit of a clock here. Facing down, 3 points of damage coming through. He knows the River Marshal is coming. It looks like he's got a Heat Ray, a Stab Wound. He's got answers. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to deal with everything? Because, the last creature will still kill you. Brandon Scheel just not too worried about that for now, because he's the one with the last creature, and indeed the penultimate creature, and potentially the creature before that as well. There's the Dauntless River Marshal. He's got mana up again. Looks like he's probably going to be passing with that mana up. Giving Williams something to think about.
Scheel not playing this 5th land right away. He only has 3 cards remaining in his hand, and Mind Rot is in the format, and Williams is on the draw, so that's definitely an option. He's going to want to not play that 5th land and instead give himself an opportunity to actually hold something like a Frostlinks or Divine Offering in his hand if his opponent has the very strong turn 5 Mind Rot in limited when you're on the draw.
And there we saw a Heat Ray killing off Dauntless River Marshal. Eventually, it succumbs to the combination of lightning and fire. And Dave Williams, he's got the Stab Wound to follow up. Stab Wound, a really interesting one. It gives -2/-2. So it's going to be a fine answer to Quickling here. We'll kill it off immediately. often you kind of end up wanting to play it on something with a little bit more toughness, because if it stays around, then every single turn from then on, that creature's controller is going to be taking 2 damage, and that damage mounts up. It's kind of like the Caustic Tar situation. It's damage that's difficult to stop.
Yeah, I mean, people who have played Return to Ravnica Limited are very familiar with just how powerful Stab Wound is, and even though it's not quite as strong in this format, it's still pretty absurd.
And it was powerful enough that they moved it up from common to uncommon when it came out in Magic 2015. Nimbus of the Isles here, the creature for Brandon Scheel, and that would have been a great one to get a Stab Wound on, putting it down to 1/1, especially now that there's a Carrion Crow for David Williams, which as a 2/2 would have been able to quite happily deal with that in a way that, you know, it can deal with the Sungrace Pegasus, but little else, to be honest, at the moment on his side of the board. Frostlinks, meaning that Carrion Crow not even untapping. This is a dangerous spot for David Williams here. The match entirely square here, every game going to a game 3.
It does not get much tighter than this.
It would be a big scalp to take down the team of Sperling, Williams and Rietzl on round 1. Obviously this tournament not single elimination, but you always want to start with a win if you can. This is not a format where there's any buys available, so we're seeing top name teams playing in the feature match area from the very first round.
Yeah, I mean, Scheel, no slouch. This is he flew here. It's not like he's a local. They are prepared. They have come to win. They're not scared to be playing against one of the very best teams in this room. That's for sure.
And Peel from Reality in Brandon Scheel's hand. This just the ideal matchup for Peel, right? You've got the way to stop your opponent's removal spells from doing anything, while meanwhile putting back your opponent's board a little bit. It's pretty much ideal. And in the meantime, he's presenting the kind of clock that means that David Williams forced into action, perhaps a little sooner than he might really want to be.
Definitely. I mean, Peel from Reality is a card that in M15 often ends up in my sideboard, but I'll sideboard it in if my opponent is mostly black or mostly red. So when your opponent is playing a black-red deck, Peel from Reality is just aces. I mean, it's perfect.
Dave Williams never liking to play against the aces. A large amount of success for him playing poker outside of Magic, and he's here with his good friends. Magic was his first love, and it's what he always comes back to. But facing down a potentially lethal set of attacks next turn, depending on what Brandon Scheel is able to deploy in the meantime.
I mean, he has a lot of options in his deck. I
mean, it looks like he's looking at a Covenant of Blood there, which would give him a little bit more life to work with. But if there were another Peel, for example...
And we know that Scheel has that Peel in hand, so if he does go for the Covenant of Blood, it's not going to work out very well for him.
And here we see he's getting a little bit of advice from Matt Sperling. This, one of the great things about team tournaments, when it comes to real crunch decisions, you can get a consult from your teammates. There's no rules against communication during games, as long as you keep the pace of play at a reasonable rate. So nobody wants games to sort of go on too long, but actually Matt Sperling, he's already lost to Zach Stern. We can see there that result now 2-1 in Zach Stern's favour. So Sperling effectively able to buddy up on every decision now. So Brandon Scheel finds himself playing against 2 players, though obviously he will also have the help of Joseph Penney if he wishes. So he's gone for the Covenant of Blood, targeting the Nimbus of the Isles. Peel from Reality returns it, and now that means Child of Night going back to Dave Williams' hand, one less way for him to gain any life. Brandon Scheel unlikely to be able to finish things this turn, but Williams now on just 3 life, and with Scheel on 26, it looks likely that this could be the end of the match. Paul Rietzl currently 1-1 against Joseph Penney, but if Scheel and Stern both win, that's the match all over. At that point, it would only be playing for pride and practice, I guess, for Paul Rietzl.
And I believe there's another Covenant of Blood here for David Williams, so it doesn't look like he's dead yet.
Figures it out. Last time round, the Nimbus was in the middle. This time round, it's on the edge. Make sure he targets the right thing. Kills it off. Gains 4 life in the process.
Yes, I would rather kill your 3/3 flying, please.
Scheel knows it's close. There's Necrogen Scudder in David Williams' hand. Not the card that you want to see at this point in the game. 3
No,
life,
not
not really
really.
something you can afford to give away at this point for a 3/3 flyer.
I think he may have to, though. He's going to be at 4, so it'll only put him down to 1.
And he's got Child of Night to go back up to 3 on attacks, which I think realistically he's going to have to make sure that Child of Night gets stuck in somewhere. But Scheel now on 27. This is a very, very rough spot for Dave Williams. Now, if you want to find out more about the process that Matt Sperling, Dave Williams, and Paul Rietzl went through, that a deck build that our text team over on the main magicthegathering.com website have gone through, so you will be able to find out the exact details of how they went about building a deck. Deck building, a real challenge in this format because there's so many options. And actually, we'll have a video later on of myself, Jake, and Marshall Sutcliffe having a bash at putting together 3 decks with 12 packs. It's not easy.
It is not easy when you only have an hour to do it. Of course, most of these teams have opened up some sealed pools together prior to the event, so they've had a bit of practice, but
yeah,
it's harrowing.
Yeah, round 0 is a really important round in this tournament, that being the deck build. Your tournament can be made or broken by making the correct decisions there.
Ooh, Spirit Bonds.
We spoke about Spirit Bonds a little bit in terms of Paul Rietzl's deck. It looks like a fairly similar split of rares, actually, between these pools. We've seen Siege Dragon in both sides of the table. Now Spirit Bonds on both sides of the table.
The mirror, if it were. The
Spirit Mirror.
3 deck mirror.
But Spirit Bonds perhaps not quite as powerful at this point in the game because Brandon Scheel...
Yeah, you really want to play it early on.
He's kind of out of gas to some extent. We can see now players looking on. Brandon Scheel offering a little bit of advice to Zach Stern. To Joseph Penney there. Because basically, now that they're a batch up, there's a certain amount of pressure off for both Joseph Penney and Brandon Scheel, because they just know that between the two of them, one of them has to win. In the same way that, like, when you're 1 game up, you're like, right, I just need to win one of the next 2. But it's literally the next 5 turns or so, the match will be over, and it might be that the 5 turns aren't even my game. So Dave Williams here.
Interesting. So did he go to 5 from playing the Scudder? Here.
Pillar of Light there from Brandon
I believe he
Scheel.
went to 5 here.
That a really important card in this format. One that basically is always going to have a target because everyone's got something powerful to do. Able to take out the Rot Feaster Maggot there, and then a Radiant Fountain from Dave Williams. A welcome bit of life game, though perhaps not a welcome land rather than a spell.
Now it's correct. It's correct.
Williams says, get busy living rather than get busy dying. He gets stuck in with that Necrogen Scudder, and he has a little bit of follow-up here. Williams now the one with the creatures on the board, but a big pickup there from Brandon Scheel. Not necessarily exactly what Dave Williams wants to see, because in the ultimate hierarchy of things that you can and can't block in the format, flyers can be tricky. Landwalk sometimes works very, very well, sometimes it doesn't. But one step above that is ultimate, just complete unblockability, and that is what Amphin Pathmage offers. 3/2 for 4, but for 3 mana, it can make target creature just simply can't be blocked. And that not what Dave Williams wants to see in the slightest, because he's not
the extra
on very much
spirit's
life at all.
pretty important here also. The ability to give Amphin Pathmage indestructibility.
Yes.
Pretty nice.
And that ability in and of itself doesn't cost mana, right?
No, it does. It costs 2.
Okay.
So
there's
you
a
can't
brief
do it right
window.
now. But all 3 creatures have unblockability and an attack.
And there's the handshake, and that ends the match. It looks like Joseph Penney won his match too, so a sweep for team Stern, Scheel and Penney.